Hey everybody, welcome back to Backlog Banter. I'm your boy Abram, joined by your price increased co-host Tucker Hazel, and we're here today to talk about the new Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass details because we just learned basically everything there is to know. But before we share our thoughts, if you want to share yours, make sure to join our Discord link as usual, top of the description right down there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. That's about all you got to do. That's about it. Not too complicated, you think, Tucker?
The three great features of Backlog Banter: like, subscribe, ring the bell. The three great features of Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack, though, are the N64, Genesis, and Animal Crossing: New Horizons Happy Home Paradise features.
Yes, for the Animal Crossing New Horizons game. Yes. But Tucker, we learned today that an individual membership for a year to the expansion pass is going to be $49.99. Yes. A family plan for 8 players is going to be $79.99. And the $24.99 Animal Crossing Happy Home Paradise expansion can either be bought by its own or included for all Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack members at no additional charge.
Yes, at no additional charge, quote unquote. I like how they say that, but
yes,
you are doubling your online membership, so it is quite an initial charge.
But it is important to note that this is not just an across-the-board price increase. If you want to stick to what you have now in Nintendo Switch Online, you can totally do that. This is completely additive. Tucker, what do you think?
On face value, more than doubling the price of your online membership for an expansion is pretty hefty. Looking at those numbers and comparing them to what came before, which was by far the cheapest online plan. It was the worst online plan from anyone.
By 2/3 or so.
But a ridiculously small amount, especially if you're using the family plan as we are.
Yes.
So from that regard, it's pretty crazy. But when you think about still how fractional this is, especially if you are using the family plan, I'm going to be getting more than my money's worth out of this in 1 month. So I'm more than happy to pay this. I actually don't think it's that ridiculous if you are using their family plan feature, which is already just a strange choice on their part to basically have you paying like 63 cents a month for online if you do split it properly. But I can understand why people would be trepidatious towards this because it is more than doubling its price.
Yeah, so we should say that we are both on a family plan, so we're each going to be paying $10 a year. So ultimately, the cost is nominal. It does not matter. It does not matter to us at all. However, putting myself in the position of buying a year, I just don't understand what people expected. I think if you go on Twitter right now, people are ablaze with criticism of Nintendo putting this up to $50.
Yeah.
And I just simply don't agree with these criticisms. I think that at a certain point, you have to look at what you're being offered, right? This is a suite of Nintendo 64 games, which were previously sold to us for $10 each, that we're getting, even if you just look at the N64 games on their own. These games, putting aside the distribution models I want to talk about in a minute, but that chunk of titles with online play for the first time ever is going to offer pound for pound far more gameplay hours than you're going to get out of Metroid Dread, let's say. Yeah. Metroid Dread is the best game of the year, in my opinion. It is one of the best games on Switch, period. But you're going to triple, if not quadruple, your playtime in this N64 app on its own, either by merit of these games, some of the best games of all time, or by merit of new online features.
Yeah.
And that's for $30 before you've even factored in the Genesis portion, right? And I think between those two libraries, that's $30 worth of content here. The Animal Crossing thing is interesting. The Animal Crossing thing for me is a bonus. It is a bonus the way that Tetris 99 was a bonus, or the way that Mario 35 was a bonus, because people are not everyone's going to have this game. And ultimately, it's a boon for the people who have it. But for those who don't want to play Animal Crossing, I still think you're getting more than $30 worth of value out of those two console libraries.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
However, I know that my experience with this and my interest in older games is significantly different from 99.9% of the human population.
Yeah.
When I putting myself in the shoes of someone who doesn't have Animal Crossing and isn't interested in it and is looking at how little the base version of this costs and thinking the most important part of this and the biggest libraries of this are the fact that you're getting online, you're getting save data, you're getting the NES and SNES libraries. That is the majority of and the important part of the content of this entire thing. that's less than half of the price. You are paying more than double of what you used to pay for what is fractionally and time-wise less important, which I think is a really interesting choice. I was really expecting this to be either a $10 increase, so 1.5 times as much, or twice as much. The more than double, I think, is where the problem comes in. Again, it's still not a ton of money, but when you think about, when you break down, yes, you could get a lot of time and value out of the games and libraries that are offering this expansion pass. It comes down to a lot of caveats. Are you interested in the games that are being offered? Do you care to play older games online? Do you have Animal Crossing? Like, if you are interacting with everything there, it's a good deal. But if you're not, $30 for the access to Ocarina of Time and Mario 64, essentially, that's really a big hike, especially when you were paying only $20 for the access to play online, which is the most important part of this.
I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I think obviously all of these are relative statements, because what is worth to one person is not going to be worth to another. But I look at it this way, right? If you don't care about, and if you're not a retro gamer, if you don't play Animal Crossing, then your life doesn't change. Don't buy the expansion pass. You still have online, you still have your cloud saves, you still have NES and SNES games, right? You still have all of that. But if you think about let's take it from the Genesis angle now. There is as I said and criticized the Genesis collection for initially, there is a Genesis collection of these games and more available on Switch for $20.
Yeah.
So effectively, let's take it from that angle. For $10 on top of the price of entry to this stuff, you're getting all these N64 games retrofitted with online, and you're getting Animal Crossing. And there's people saying, oh, Nintendo's going to add more, they're going to add more. I don't want to speak from that perspective, because I don't know if Nintendo's going to add more. I feel like you have basically no reason to believe that, considering how poor the NSO rollout has been. Yeah. But on the face value of this, at a certain point, you have to ascribe a value to these games. These are valuable games. Sure. I would argue that NES games and SNES games are not very valuable anymore.
No.
Especially not in the context of an online equipped ecosystem. But N64 games with online play are worth something. Sure. And if they're not worth, initially we're getting 9 games, and then we're getting another 6 or so. So let's say 15 games in total. If those games aren't worth,
I mean, it might be more than 6. I think there's like.
Let's just say for the sake of my argument, let's say we're going to have 15 in total by the time the wave is done. If those games are worth less than $2 a piece to you, then I don't know what to say, because yes, you don't own them.
Yeah, it's $2 a year.
Yeah, but what's the difference between you're paying, how much do you pay for Netflix, and what fraction of Netflix's content do you watch every year? You don't own any of that. Sure. We pay for Disney Plus. You bought a Premier Access movie through Disney Plus. You don't really own that. Your membership lapses, you don't have those. I think that people are operating under the context that this is NSO is a thing, and you're getting more NSO. That's really not what this is. This is not giving you more cloud storage. It's not giving you it's not giving you voice chat. They're not locking a messaging service behind there. There are no UI, UX features in here. This is access to more games. Yes. And I think that the games in here are worth $30.
I think an interesting thing of what you just said is all these extra features of a voice chat or a messaging feature. That, I think, would actually more justify a more than double price increase for more features that more people are going to want to interact with, that are across the board more applicable to more people. The problem comes down that it is specific use cases for each of these things. If you used to, on the Wii U, and of course we can talk about how Virtual Console used to work in comparison to this, if you used to want to do that, it is $10 for Mario 64. And yes, that is obviously a lot more than you are paying for it here, but that is a one-time thing, and you don't have to deal with, well, I'm paying for Happy Home Paradise, but I'm never going to use it because I don't play Animal Crossing. I think that's where a lot of it comes down to, is people looking at this like a huge portion of the value of this is something that a lot of people aren't going to be interacting with.
No, I agree with you, but that's why it doesn't matter to me. The reason I disagree with what you said initially is that if Nintendo was holding hostage features that should be in the base version for this, then I would have a serious issue with the price increase. Because then functionality of an online service is being tied behind what is ostensibly a boutique edition for people who want to play more classic games.
I definitely agree.
This is not a situation where you are paying for the complete Nintendo Switch Online experience. You are paying for more retro games, in effect.
Yeah,
and what could hypothetically become a sort of subscription model to Nintendo's expansions. Whether or not Animal Crossing is a one-time thing or not, we don't know, and I don't want to speculate because I don't feel like Nintendo deserves the benefit of the doubt with how they roll out content in this regard.
Yeah.
But I just think that in the absence of fundamental features being in the expansion pass, all you have to think about for yourself is, do I want to play in 64 games? If the answer is yes, then you're paying about $2 per year per game for an individual member for the increase. If you want to play Genesis games, all of a sudden that the cost per game is getting lower. And at a certain point, I just don't think that we can reasonably expect anything different. What I was concerned about when NSO first started rolling out and when more games and systems are being added was that we're going to end up in a Game Pass situation. I pay $15 a month for Game Pass.
Yes.
And that's a lot more games, but ultimately, a lot of those games pale in comparison to what Nintendo is offering here. And I'm not saying that just to be a Nintendo fanboy, but these are some of the best games of all time that are very hard to access now. Right.
Sure.
And that is worth, I think at a certain point that is worth money. And what Nintendo is offering is reasonable. If they were saying $15 a month for expansion pass,
of course,
then we would have a serious problem. But if they're saying $30 per year for the expansion, when you break down the math, I just don't see any way where it's difficult to justify if you want these games. And if you don't want the games, Nintendo is not forcing anything upon you.
100%. I think that caveat is the biggest boon for them, is that they can say, no, hey, like, it's more than double, but that's optional, which is good, which is good. I think what I sort of came down on initially on this, and again, I'm taking the devil's advocate perspective here. I'm going to enjoy this. I think it's certainly worth the money. I'm happy with the percentage I'm paying for it, especially because of the family plan. But when you look at the base thing, which is $20 a year or $50 a year, 20 or 50.
20,
and you look at what the $20 is giving you, which is online access.
Sure.
But bad online access across the board comparatively. It's giving you cloud saves, which the other consoles give you for free. Like, people have problems with the base NSO subscription, and the fact that that's still the more important part, structure-wise, to what you're paying for. The fact that this expansion is more than the base one, I think, is where it really becomes weird.
No, I agree. NSO is terrible. It is NSO for me is a membership to retro games.
Same here.
And Nintendo, I think, recognized that that's what NSO is with the expansion pass.
Yeah.
I genuinely think where they went wrong with NSO was saying, here is terrible cloud saves, here's poor net code, here is no onboard messaging, here's a fucking smartphone app.
Yeah.
Tying that to the games was a huge mistake.
Sure. No, I agree.
That online stuff should have been free because it is not worth paying for.
Yes.
But your rebuttal, which I came around to agreeing with, is that you're paying $20 a year for all of these NES and SNES games, and that's worth it.
Yes, it was for me, most certainly.
And when you look at an N64 game, you look at something like F-Zero X, right? I just beat F-Zero SNES. You can beat it in an hour. The amount of content going from F-Zero to F-Zero X is exponential.
Yes, 100%.
The amount of value you're getting here is huge, just off of the 15 confirmed games we have, or however many it is. I just take issue with the undervaluing of content across the board. Now, I happen to be in a fortunate position where this is my job, where when I spend this, for full disclosure, I spend money on a game and I make it back on whatever content I create about it. So I am speaking from a position of privilege on the subject.
Yeah, 100%.
But at a certain point, as if we need to value content. We can't have this continual race to the bottom of everything's free or everything costs nothing or everything costs a little.
Yeah.
I think that this is a little for a lot. And if we're asking Nintendo for less, Nintendo overcharges on everything. Famicom Detective Club.
Yes.
Skyward Sword HD. There are so many examples from 2021 alone. But I don't think this is one of them when you break down what you're getting.
Yeah. And especially, most interestingly, I think from the rollout perspective of all of this, that we as Animal Crossing players are getting the $25 expansion for free with this. Which I think is really interesting, and obviously why they didn't announce the stuff in the direct. They wanted to have everything, its information-wise and price-wise, be tied to the announcement of Happy Home Paradise, which for that I'm very grateful for. I mean, as they announced $25. Of course, it was seconds later that they announced that it was tied to the thing. But for that small window of time, I was like, yeah, I guess I'll pay $25 for that, and I'll also be increasing my my subscription fee to play NES or N64 and Genesis. But those two things together, that's fine, that's manageable. But having them together as an Animal Crossing player, that's a lot of value.
It's a lot of value, and one of my friends, Lewis Parker, raised a really interesting point of, sure, it's included, but then I'm basically being held ransom for my subscription, because then what if I lose my membership? I lose Happy Home Paradise. And
that's true. That's really interesting.
And I think that is a really good point. But I think at the same time, we have to, at a certain point, accept the fact that we live in an ecosystem now, as a gaming industry, that is how content works.
Yeah, very little of your stuff you actually own.
Yes, and that is a much larger, that is a symptom of gaming moving in the direction of every other entertainment medium.
Yes.
And that is a different conversation to have. But at a certain point, if my Game Pass subscription lapses on Xbox, I have like Star Wars: The Force Unleashed and Sonic Adventure.
Yes.
Everything else is gone. Mm-hmm. If my PlayStation Plus lapses, I lose the entire PlayStation Plus collection. I lose 6-7 years worth of PlayStation Plus games that I've gotten every month. The fact of the matter is that is a good point, but it is a point that is unfortunately the status quo now when you buy into a subscription service. So I just think that the fact that this is optional, the fact that you're getting so much for, in my opinion, so little on a per game basis, just makes these arguments applicable only to the people who do not care about this content in the first place.
It's interesting to hear people who are already not Nintendo Switch fans taking aim at this, because it is something that people across the board have always complained about with Nintendo. Is they overcharge for their stuff, they don't drop their prices on things, they do value their backlog content much more highly than anyone else in the industry does, and there's a certain merit to that, considering that they are they've created some of the best games of all time, and people still revere a lot of that content. But when you put that into perspective of someone like Xbox, where a lot of things is free backwards compatibility, is Game Pass giving access to all this stuff, it is, in comparison, obviously less money, but less value, less care put into it. And I think that's why people are really feeling this more than double price increase, is because it just feels like Nintendo being more Nintendo in a way that most people aren't a fan of. They look at the fact that Game Pass gives you access to fucking everything and its mother, and they're like, okay, yeah, that's a great deal. It's the best deal in gaming, and I agree with that. And Nintendo is like, have some DLC to rent for $30 a year, more than double what you used to pay for your online subscription. I really do understand why a lot of people are upset by this, because when put into comparison to everything, and when put into comparison how the industry is trending, unfortunately for you and I think the industry as a whole, we are doing that race to the bottom. Steam games do go on sale on much. Game Pass is getting more and more content and not changing in price. And Nintendo is a holdout against that, but not really. And it puts it in a weird position where, yes, this is a good value when you really break it down. Yeah. But it's not a good value when you compare it to what everyone else is doing, and because there are so many caveats to it.
I think I agree with a difference. Let's throw it back to the first essay writing class you take in high school. Game Pass is a complete outlier in the entire industry, because Microsoft does not care if they lose literally hundreds of millions of dollars in Game Pass. Literally. They have to pay out the ass from like Outriders, and Outriders is one game. Game Pass is not profitable. It will not be profitable for a long time. Netflix is barely profitable. What I think about is PlayStation. PlayStation gives you the static PlayStation Plus collection, which has like 20 or so games and genuinely probably 700 hours of content in there.
And at that point, $500 worth of value.
That is a great value. Undisputably. And what Nintendo is offering does not meet that.
No.
However, when what everybody said about Virtual Console is that Virtual Console is too expensive. Virtual Console is a bad model. We need to move away from Virtual Console. And this
then
is
they moved away from Virtual Console.
and it took them a long time to get here. And where we are here, I think, is getting to where it's commensurate to Virtual Console. We are not there yet. We need Game Boy. We need a Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, of course.
We need to push forward, perhaps into GameCube. That's really the pie in the sky, right? But the fact is, now we're getting the Nintendo Retro Game membership.
Yeah,
what we've been asking for so long, and that $50 for a year, I think it's reasonable through that lens.
Sure, no, I agree.
It is not what PlayStation is offering. It is not what Xbox is offering. But ultimately, if you diagnose the problem of Nintendo's retro handling of their retro games, of their back catalog, on Wii, 3DS, Wii U, finally, it took us 3 years too long, because this is what NSO should have been from the beginning.
Yes, of course.
But finally, we're in a position where I think we have that antidote.
Yes, no, I definitely agree.
Cost money. But I think that $50 for that, for like 60, 70 of Nintendo's classic games, and Sega's stuff now, and fucking Konami when they throw stuff on SNES Online or whatever, for the people who want that, that is worth money. And that's all I have to say.
It's interesting to think, I definitely agree. I think it is good on its own.
Yeah.
It's weird when you put it into all these different perspectives, but I'm still going to pay for it. And the most exciting thing is it only gets more valuable. I mean, in a month or two, that's a bunch of N64 games that I was planning on playing at some point in my life that I would have either emulated or spent $9-10 a piece on my Wii U. And now I'm saving money buying this thing. I'm saving money not to buy Pokemon Snap and Paper Mario and Banjo-Kazooie and F-Zero X separately, and I can play them also online with you, which is where I think the most value of this comes in. Even going back to NES games, the fact they're adding online and rewind and save states and all this stuff to this, it's a huge boon to all these games. Their playability, their accessibility, their resolution, their being able to play N64 multiplayer games online. I would never play N64 games multiplayer in my life if it wasn't. And that's awesome. That's awesome to know. The one thing that does cause me a little bit of pause is looking at how they're presenting this as this is the expansion to NSO.
Yeah.
Do you think we even have a chance of getting other consoles added to this? Would they be added to the base version? Would they be added to this? Would this cost more in the future? Like,
the persistent rumors are that this is going to get Game Boy. It's going to get Game Boy Advance in the expansion pack.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Ultimately, I don't want to speculate about that.
No,
because Nintendo has proven consistently that they have no consistency at all when games are rolled out for this thing. And so that's why
I'm happy about Fire and Ice Bros or whatever.
I'm not excited about Jelly Boy. Thank you. So I am a big defender of this, but I am not willing to be a hypothetical defender of this, as a lot of people on Twitter are.
No, that's reasonable.
Oh, Nintendo's going to give us X. They're going to give us Y. Yeah, maybe. But also, where's Earthbound? And how come I waited a year and a half to play fucking, like, what is it, like TAC or whatever, the prehistoric man. So I'd pump the brakes there. But I just think that the alternative is what? An $80 N64 mini that has a fraction of the features at a quadruple the price. I just think that this is the best way to get this content.
And here's where it really comes down to all of this. Anyone who's watching, if you are skeptical of a Nintendo Switch Online, if you're skeptical of this expansion pass, if you're skeptical of the value that you're getting, I'm not even saying the word correctly, but find 8 friends and use the family plan.
Yes.
At that point, you can sneeze and that much money will come out of your nose and you have access to all these games. Absolutely. The family plan is a ludicrous deal that essentially negates every issue we've mentioned so far. When you're paying $5 to $10 a year for this, which breaks down to less than $1 per month if you do it properly.
Right.
It's an unreasonable deal. I don't even know how Nintendo is allowing this to happen. That's the best deal
in gaming.
Yes. I mean, hey, I'm not gonna say it, but I'll say it. But seriously, the family plan is a ridiculous deal. It negates all these problems we've been mentioning. You're really paying nothing at that point, and you have access to all these games. And at that price, it will incentivize you to explore other retro libraries and stuff. So just get the goddamn family plan. And that's it. That's simple.
I endorse that message. Tucker, anything else you want to say?
No.
I think I've said my piece. We'll catch you with that win back review in a week and a half.
Wait, final thing. Do we know when this is coming out? November 5th?
Oh yeah, sorry, we should have said that at the beginning. Holy Christ. October 25th is when the expansion pass releases.
Yeah.
With the N64 and Genesis libraries. And then on November 5th, we get Animal Crossing 2.0 and Happy Home Paradise the same day.
Yes.
And of course, then you'll get that for free in your membership.
Yep.
I will say, because I'm an impatient fucker, I wanted this to be next week, so then we could space it out. So we have NSO week, and then Mario Party week, and then Animal Crossing week, and then BDSP week, which we'll be reviewing. But Tucker, non sequiturs at this point. Again, if you made it to the end of this video, we definitely want to talk to you about all of this stuff because you're clearly an engaged person. You're smart enough to listen to us.
True.
So maybe we will become smarter by listening to you. It's unlikely that you're going to be smarter than us, but come to the Discord and try to prove us wrong.
Exactly.
On that note, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like the video, you know what to do. And we'll talk to you